This morning too. It was perfect. How can you be dead if you've never been alive? So this morning, my title is In Search of the Holy Grail. I had to come up with it quickly. Steve called me, what was it, about a month ago. He asked for a title. And he said, well, you probably have a lesson, a message that you're doing. And I said, well, actually I don't. I'm not saying I work on the fly, but I like to speak about what's really up for me and what's really important to me in the moment. So I tend not to have, so I had to come up with a title. And fortunately, as I was sitting in the office a few minutes before the service started, it finally gelled for me. How the title actually, it's like when you have a title and then you try to work it into what you really want to talk about. So I finally got it to work for me. So praise God. I mean, I feel like, I've already been blessed already this morning. And once again, the inspirational reading really worked. The music, so meaningful and centering. So, In Search of the Holy Grail. And to me, the Holy Grail for me has always had that image of looking for that special something that would make all my dreams come true, that would fulfill my life, so I could have a real life. And waiting for that real life to happen by finding whatever that grail is. All my dreams would come true. I knew if I could find it. I've always thought Holy Grail, the Grail sounded so strange, and apparently it's some sort of old English word for cup or bowl, something long out of use. So it always seemed like, so that's part of what made it sound so magical, the Holy Grail, because I didn't realize it was really talking about a cup. But the Holy Grail itself is that cup that Jesus used at the Last Supper, in which he shared and which they drank from. And so in this case, for us metaphysically, the Grail, the Holy Grail, represents, as Jesus is sharing with his disciples in that time at the Last Supper, and he's inviting them to drink, and he refers to his blood in the covenant, entering into that covenant with him. And to me, it's a covenant with life. Entering into a covenant to really live that life, to live the life, this gift of life that God has given us. And so part of why I thought of the Holy Grail is what came to me is there's this scene, and I don't know, as I get older, I realize this movie gets older and older too. But there's this movie that at one time, I loved it. It was Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. It was my favorite of the Indiana Jones films. I don't know how many of you remember that one. You go back that far. But it was a wonderful film, and ultimately it was an adventure story about Indiana Jones, who's this scientist, historian who loves to find and save antiquities. And he's following in the footsteps of his father, and they are together looking for the Holy Grail. And at the same time, they're competing with this. There's always the villain who, unlike Indiana Jones, who wants to save it so that all humanity can enjoy it and honor and be awed by it. The villain wants it for his own purposes, his own egotistical purposes of he wants to live forever and have absolute power. Though, most days that doesn't sound so bad, does it? Having absolute power. But anyway, so they're in this race to find the Holy Grail. And there's this one scene at the end where they have finally arrived at the place where the Holy Grail is supposedly hidden. And it's being guarded by one of the knights from the Crusades. And obviously the Crusades happened several hundred years before this. So the Holy Grail must actually work that this knight was able to survive all these years. So it's being guarded, and they come into this chamber, and they're seeking, and there's this amazing array of cups of all kinds and shapes, and they have to decide, they have to choose which one is actually the Holy Grail. And my favorite line in the whole film is when the villain, chooses one of those cups, one of those ornate, really special cups, and drinks from it, and he totally disintegrates. And the knight says, "He chose poorly." I love that line. And so it came to my mind, because choice to me is so the key to what it means to live fully. And so so that came to me, and I thought, well, I'll use that in search of the Holy Grail. So I've had recently, and why it was so important to me is recently I had my own Grail experience, modern day Grail in the form of a water bottle. And I was at a meeting out of town, and with several other colleagues, and we had all our luggage, and we were packing up to leave. And I and another person, we were doing the packing, and we were, putting everybody's luggage in. And of course, I'm one of these people who likes to get everything done right. So I am working hard to get all the luggage in just so. And at one point, I stop and I notice that one of my colleagues has a water bottle with her luggage. And I stop for a moment, and I turned to my fellow packer, and I said, "Do you think she might want this with her?" And she said, "Oh, go ahead and pack it." So we packed it. We packed everything. We got into the car. We were all loaded, ready to go. We were waiting for this one colleague to come. She comes, she arrives, she gets in the car, she looks around, she says, "What do you think?" she said. "Where's my water bottle?" And my co-packer and I, we look at each other. It's like, and in that moment, I just lost out. Oh, you know what? And you got to record this, right?
You can do it over there.
Okay, can I do it to the side here? This will work? Oh, praise God. Okay. All right, so it's going to be so I'm going to have to stand here and probably just kind of shake, twist. So anyway, she wanted her water bottle, and I was really upset with myself because I thought, I had that moment when it occurred to me to leave it out, and I didn't. And I was really upset with myself, but it was no big deal, actually. I mean, we got out, we unpacked, we got her bottle out, we got it to her. But it bugged me, and I thought about that. Why did that bug me so much? And I realized because it's part of this game I sometimes play with myself called second guessing. Have you ever played that game with yourself? Where you second guess your own inner kind of tuition and feelings and sort of gut feeling, and you kind of second guess it, and you go with what you usually do. And for me, what I usually do is I like to be thorough and complete. So in this moment, I went for thorough and complete in my packing. And so my tendency then is to say, well, I made a wrong choice. But the more I thought about it, I realized it wasn't that it was a wrong choice. And what I realized is I chose poorly. And here's how I came to recognize I chose poorly. As I was considering it, for one thing, choosing to be thorough and accurate is at times a very good choice. Whenever I am driving across a bridge, I'm hoping that the people who built that bridge were totally into being accurate and complete. So we know that those are good values to have. But I realized that what was the poor choice for me in that moment was that the value that was most important to me in that situation was to be helpful and supportive.